Hello and welcome to another episode of the Marinelli Podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the top headlines throughout the sporting world from this past week. Breaking news from today, the World Junior Hockey Championship was completely cancelled by the IIHF as a result of COVID-19 outbreaks affecting many of the teams on Wednesday, December 28th, according to Bob McKenzie. The director of the IIHF said they were going to take next month, so January 2022, to try and possibly reschedule the tournament for later in 2022, but nothing has been confirmed as of yet. And that's a shame for Team Canada because they won both of their first two games and handily at that. In their first game, they beat Czechia or Czech Republic 6-3. They were down 3-1 in the first period, but a hat trick from the defenseman Owen Power, which included 2 power play goals, propelled Canada to a victory. It was the first time that a defenseman did that, so that's impressive. And then in Game 2, Canada destroyed Austria 11-2. Connor Bedard scored 4 times, and Canada's power play scored twice again. Canada was first place in their group before the tournament was cancelled. They are 2-0 with 17 goals for, and Finland is right behind them. They're 2-0, but they've scored 10 goals. Some sad news on Tuesday. John Madden, a legendary NFL player, Super Bowl winning coach with the Oakland Raiders, who in his 10 seasons of coaching never had a losing season, and one of the best broadcasters and NFL analysts of all time, died on Tuesday at the age of 85 years old. He was also the creator and the face of the Madden video games for over 20 years. He was one of the best coaches in NFL history, and his loss is felt all over the NFL. In other news, Napoli forward and European champion Lorenzo Insigne is on the verge of signing with TFC for $12.5 million a year over 5 years. This move is similar to Sebastian Giovinco's signing in terms of a talented European player coming to Toronto. Signing Lorenzo Insigne would be excellent in terms of the fact that it would speed up Toronto's rebuild after a disappointing 2021 campaign. He would become the best player in franchise history. Sebastian Giovinco would be a close second, and he would automatically become one of the best players in the MLS. Other potential landing spots for Insigne are Tottenham in the Premier League, AC Milan, Inter Milan, and an extension at Napoli, which is the least likely. The NHL continues to postpone games due to Omicron and COVID-19, including games between Canadian teams and cross-border games. On December 27th, the season was supposed to resume, but 14 games were postponed that day. In addition, the NHL is also postponing games in January, not because of COVID, but because that they're not able to sell out those games. I'm assuming the NHL is trying to make money back from the season with no fans. And as a result, they want to try and sell out the arenas, but they're unable to do so with uncertainty over the Omicron variant. So they're canceling games in January already. That has a lot of people extremely frustrated because the NHL made teams like the Islanders and the Senators play with an AHL roster, but because of COVID outbreaks, they didn't postpone their games right away, but now they're postponing games, not for COVID, but because teams are not able to sell out arenas, which is quite perplexing. Also, a lot of NBA owners and media and players and general managers across the league are very shocked that the NBA is not taking a similar approach to the NHL and not postponing their games as well. Because you've got quite a few teams that have lots of players on the COVID list, and you've got teams like the Raptors who lost basically their entire roster to COVID-19. And the Raptors are officially back from their extended break. In their game against the Cavaliers on December 26th, they lost by 45 points because they had basically their entire roster that night consisted of replacement players that did not get a single practice with the team until 90 minutes before tip-off. The Before the game on December 28th against the 76ers, Siakam, Boucher, and Trent Jr. and Watanabe returned from COVID, but Kem Birch, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Precious Achiuwa, and Scotty Barnes were still out. As a result of the numerous players that Toronto was still missing, they lost 114-109 against the 76ers on Tuesday, but it was much closer than the loss against the Cavs, which is a positive. And despite all the missing players, the Raptors played a good defensive game. They were solid offensively, and they kept the game close all night long, which is really all you can ask for when you have a significant portion of your team out on COVID. Over to the Premier League. The Premier League, about halfway through the season, and the Premier League, it looks like it's going to be a very interesting finish. So right now, there's a clear-cut top four. Man City at 1. They're 15-2-2 for 47 points. Liverpool at 2, 12-5-2 for 41 points. Chelsea 12-5-2 for 41 points. Then Arsenal's the 4 spot, 11-2-6 for 35 points. Obviously, it looks like Man City's going to run away with it. They've been the best club in the Prem, and it doesn't look like they're going to show any signs of slowing down. Liverpool has had a sensational season with Mo Salah, and they're going to be in a neck-and-neck race with Chelsea for the second spot. And then Arsenal started the season like bottom of the league. It looked like for a little while that they would get relegated, but they've gone on quite the mid-season run under Mikel Arteta, and all their guys are coming into form. However, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has likely played his last game in an Arsenal shirt after all the off-field drama that he's gone through in the last couple weeks. Back to the NBA, the Golden State Warriors look like championship contenders, and they don't even have Klay Thompson back from an injury yet. They're on fire, and so is Steph Curry. Who is the greatest shooter of all time, and who is the only player in NBA history to have over 3,000 three-pointers, a mark that Steph Curry hit yesterday. Other championship contenders are obviously the Phoenix Suns, the Brooklyn Nets, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. They might not be championship contenders, but they got an incredible roster, and they're up there in the Eastern Conference standings. They lost Ricky Rubio, their point guard, to I believe it was an Achilles injury, so he's done for the season, or Achilles or ACL. He's done for the season, so that's a big blow for them, but they look good. And there was actually talks that because LeBron is struggling over in Los Angeles with the Lakers, there was some discussions that he would come to Cleveland and finish his career with Cleveland. As interesting as that would be, and that would quite possibly make them championship contenders as well. Wouldn't that be great? Another Cavs Warriors NBA Finals. But as interesting as that would be, I don't think it's going to happen. Finally, over to the NFL. Let's take a look at the playoff picture after Week 16 and the clinching scenarios for various teams. So in the AFC, the Chiefs are 11-4. They've clinched a playoff spot, and they've clinched the AFC West for the 6th straight year. They can clinch first seed in the AFC with a win and a Titans loss or tie. The Titans are 10-5. They're the second seed. They can clinch the AFC South with a win and a Colts loss. To clinch the first seed, they need to win both of their games and have the Chiefs lose one of their next two, because the Titans do have the head-to-head over Kansas City. The Cincinnati Bengals are 9-6. They can clinch the AFC North with a win. They control their own destiny, and right now they look like one of the hottest teams in the NFL, so I'd be surprised if they don't win the AFC North. The Bills are 9-6. They're the 4th seed. They can clinch a playoff spot with a win and a Ravens loss. They can clinch the AFC East by winning their next two games, and the Patriots have to lose one of their next two. The Colts are 9-6. They have to win out, and the Titans have to lose at least one of their next two games to clinch a playoff spot. The Patriots are 9-6. They can clinch a playoff spot with a win and a Dolphins loss, and they can clinch the AFC East by winning their next 2 games, and the Bills have to lose one of their next 2 games. The Dolphins are 8-7 after 7 straight W's. They can clinch a spot in the playoffs by winning out, and the Ravens and Chargers have to lose one of their next 2 games. And then in the hunt, you got the Chargers, who are 8-7, the Raiders, who are 8-7, and the Ravens, who are 8-7. The Chargers and Raiders can get into the playoffs by winning out and having the Colts, Pats, and Dolphins lose one of their next 2 games, and the Ravens can get in by winning out and having the Bengals lose at least 1 game, or having the Dolphins and Patriots lose one of their next 2. In the NFC, you have the Packers that are 12-3. They've clinched the playoff spot, and they've clinched the NFC North for the 3rd straight year. They can clinch the number 1 seed with a win and a Cowboys loss. The Cowboys are the 2 seed at 11-4. They've clinched a playoff spot and the NFC East division. They can clinch the 1 seed with 2 wins and 2 Green Bay losses. The Rams are 11-4. They've clinched a playoff spot. They can clinch the NFC West with a win and a Cardinals loss or tie. The Buccaneers are 11-4. They've clinched a playoff spot and the NFC South. The Cardinals are 10-5. They're the 5th seed. They've fallen off a little bit after losing 3 straight games. They've clinched a playoff spot, and believe it or not, they can still clinch the NFC West with 2 wins, and if the Rams lose one of their next 2 games, because the Cardinals and Rams did split their season series. The 49ers are 8-7. They can clinch a playoff spot with a win and a Saints loss or tie. They're the 6th seed. And the Eagles, they're the 7th seed. They're 8-7 as well. They can clinch a playoff spot with a win and a loss or tie from the Saints and Vikings. In the hunt, the Vikings are 7-8. The Falcons are 7-8, and the Saints are 7-8, and they can all get into the playoffs if they win out and have the Eagles or 49ers lose one of their next 2 games. So basically, in the AFC, the Chiefs are the only team that have clinched, and then there are 9 teams fighting over 6 spots, and then in the NFC, 5 teams have clinched, and there are 5 teams fighting over 2 spots. So these last 2 weeks of the NFL season are going to be very, very interesting. And finally, I want to take a minute to talk about the Denver Broncos. At 7-8, with 2 games left, they are not going to make the playoffs. They have like a 0.1% chance. It's not happening. However, I believe that they should do the following before next season. So Vic Fangio, as we know, is an excellent defensive coach. However, he's not head coach material. Vic Fangio said in a Monday morning availability that he would love to stay with the team in any capacity possible. So the Broncos should demote Vic Fangio to defensive coordinator. He's a great defensive-minded coach, and if he just focuses solely on the defense, this defense can get even better than it is now, and this defense is already a top 10 unit in the league. Obviously, Pat Shurmur has been absolutely horrible, a horrible play caller this year, and cannot develop a quarterback. So the Broncos have to fire Pat Shurmur. They have to hire they have to hire a competent offensive coordinator that can develop a quarterback and is actually a good play caller. In other words, by being a good play caller, he actually has to use his running backs effectively, which is something that Shurmur doesn't quite know how to do. Because Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, that's one of the best running back duos in the league. Top 10, top 15, around there somewhere, maybe 12, 13. So they're one of the better running back duos in the league. Yet Shurmur doesn't use them enough. You pound the next offensive coordinator has to pound the ball with Gordon and Javonte Williams. Then teams have to bring an extra guy down to stop the run, and that's when you hit those play action passes downfield. Shurmur refuses to use his running backs effectively, and that's hurt Denver this season. So an offensive coordinator that can actually develop a quarterback is a good play caller and who uses his running backs effectively is a must for Denver. And then you also need to hire an offensive-minded head coach to help out the offensive coordinator. And there are a lot of good offensive-minded coaching candidates that are available or that can be made available this offseason. So George Paton should really definitely look at that. And then finally, the two games that the Denver Broncos have left may not mean much for playoff contention, considering they have like a 0.1% chance to make the playoffs. However, they do mean a lot for a certain quarterback on this roster. I believe Denver should start Drew Lock for the last 2 games of the season, just so they can see what they have in him. Listen, Lock's a third-year guy, but he's started in less than like 20 games. Because in 2019 he doesn't start until week 13, so he only plays 5 that season. In 2020, he was the number 1 starter, but he was injured in a few games and missed the game because of COVID. So he only played, I believe, 12 or 13 games that year. And then this year he's played 2. He started 2 and played in a third game. So he started in like 20-ish games. That's not enough time to declare a quarterback a bust. You can't declare a quarterback a bust after only 20 starts. You just can't. It's not enough time for the quarterback to develop. And honestly, Locke has played pretty darn well in the games against Cincinnati and Las Vegas. He made smart decisions. He didn't turn the ball over, aside from that one red zone fumble against Cincinnati. He should have handed the ball off there, but that's besides the point. He made good, accurate throws, and his stat lines weren't great both of those games, but in Cincinnati, he led a touchdown drive and would have had probably a second one if he didn't fumble the ball in the red zone. And against Oakland, he didn't have a single touchdown. But in both of those games, his receivers were dropping balls left and right. So if they don't drop those balls, not only do his stats improve, but also you potentially get more points in those 2 games, because those catches extend drives and lead to either more touchdowns or more field goals. So in these next 2 games, not only do you need to start Locke, but you need to look at how he plays. Because as the back, not a lot of quarterbacks can develop. Not a lot of quarterbacks can develop just by sitting on the sideline and watching. But who knows? Maybe Locke can. And I'm not saying he played perfect against Cincinnati and Las Vegas, because he didn't play perfect, but he played pretty damn well in both those games. Locke was very disappointed that he didn't get the starting job over Teddy Bridgewater this year, and according to multiple reports, the way he prepared and practiced for each game, even though he was the backup, stayed the same and or got more intense. He put more time and more effort preparing for each game, even though he was the backup. So you can see that he really wanted to start, and you can see, based on his work ethic in practice, in the limited reps he got, and on his own time, that he really was disappointed he didn't get the starting job, and that he wanted to prove that he was good enough to start. So I want to see Locke get the start these last 2 weeks. Even if Teddy Bridgewater's healthy, I want to see what they have in him. And who knows, if he can get 2 wins against the Chargers and the Chiefs, play mistake-free football games while doing so, then who knows, maybe the Broncos do have something in him. And then finally, you also have to bring in a free agent quarterback in the offseason and have Locke compete with them for the starting role. Because again, more competition is what Drew needs. Clearly, he was not happy that he lost the starting quarterback battle against Teddy Bridgewater this season, and the fact that he didn't get the starting job made him work harder, made him train harder, made him practice harder, made him study the playbook harder. So if he has to compete for a starting job again next year, he'll be even more motivated to do well. Unless the Broncos somehow manage to bring in Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or Matt Ryan. If they bring in any of those 3 guys, which is unlikely at this point, but who knows, then they'll get the start automatically. But if it's a mid-tier quarterback, like Ryan Tannehill or someone like that, then Locke should compete with him for the job. Don't get me wrong, I'm also not a hater of Bridgewater. I don't mind Teddy Bridgewater, and watching him play this year wasn't bad. Teddy Bridgewater is not a bad quarterback. It's just that the whole point of bringing in Teddy Bridgewater was to play mistake-free football. They brought Teddy Bridgewater in because he's a safe quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over a lot and can manage games and get the team wins. Despite his decent play this year, despite his limited turnovers, Teddy Bridgewater couldn't help this team to more wins. And the Broncos had the second easiest schedule in the league, and as of now, they only have 7 wins. They're 7-8. When you bring in a quarterback to play mistake-free football, you expect to win more than 7 games. But unfortunately, the few turnovers that Teddy Bridgewater did have often resulted in losses, and which hurt the team. And also, Teddy Bridgewater's reluctance to take deep shots downfield also kind of hurt the team. He took a few deep shots downfield, but not enough. And there was a stretch of a couple games where Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick were barely used. So like with two receivers as good as them, that get paid as much as they do, you got to use them more. Okay, thank you all very much for listening to another episode of the Marinelli Podcast. I really appreciate your support. If you liked the video, please feel free to leave a thumbs up. And if you have a second, hitting that subscribe button would mean a lot to me as well. It's free, it takes you 2 seconds, and you can always unsubscribe later. Again, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your support. And until next time, see you later.